Welcome to ShiftJockey, online shift scheduling made easy. I'm going to take this time now to give you some information about how you might build and edit your schedule. Where we're going to start is your client-specific user login page. This is a client-specific web address that we will provide to you for your group after you successfully subscribe for service with us. We're logging in now as an administrator. It has build privilege. I'm not going to go over any of the administrator privileges in general. There's a separate video for that. We're going to focus on building and editing the schedule. One note here is that editing ability and building ability of a schedule can be delegated to more than one user and does not have to be the main manager or administrator. So those are specific preferences that we will build for your group at configuration time. And those things can be changed over time as well. The most critical aspect to schedule building is the build lock, and this is generally a privilege that's reserved for only one head administrative user. This user has the ability to change whether a calendar is open for time off requests, built, which is open for shift swap requests, or in build, which allows builders to work on it. The normal function would be that in general this period of time would be open. We'll let this cycle through. Your builders would not be able to get in to build that schedule yet, but the head administrator would say, okay, it's time to build the schedule. We will convert this period to in build. That will now lock it out so users cannot view that period of time, but then the builders will now have the ability to go in and build. When they do go in and build, they can click here. It'll take them to that calendar interval that's open for building. Here the month has been built halfway. What they see are their sites where they have the ability to build. For each site will be different shifts that they can build with, site-specific shifts. If your group only has one site, you would only have the one set. Again, a schedule legend. At the bottom of the month, you'll see a new table that shows the shifts that need to be filled for this site, and it's giving you a graphical and by color representation of how close you are to filling the needs of the department for that shift. So part of your configuration when you add shifts is you tell it how many of that shift you need on every given day for that site, and it knows that here. So as we're building, this orangey tan color means that we have not yet fulfilled the number of shifts covered. Green means we've hit it dead on, and if we schedule too many on that day, it turns red and says we have 2 of that EC shift, and we don't need that many. That's too many, so we could get rid of 1 and then go back to normal. So the idea is, as you're building the schedule, you want to convert this from this tannish orange to green as you're building the schedule, and we can do that here. You can see. That's a quick way of making sure you're filling all your shifts and not going over. On the right of the schedule, based on the FTE that we have defined for each of our users, it is calculating based on this period of time how many work units, shift units, each user is expected to work in that period of time, and then it's calculating as we build it live how many they've actually been scheduled to work. So for instance, this user up here has been scheduled to work for about half of what they're expected to work. And as we build the schedule, not only will it populate down here how many shifts that day we have covered, it will adjust over here. You can see that function here as I just drop in another shift, where now it turned to this green and it ran that from 11 to 12.5. This shift is obviously now 1.5 units. Next to your expected FT, ideally as you build the schedule, then you would want to build this until that actual equals the expected. To the right of there, it's giving you a tally from the beginning of the year of how many of each of these shifts this worker has worked, and that includes vacation units, all their time off units, off without pay, vacation units, holiday units, and weekend units. That's why it's important to designate holidays in the system so it can count them here. So as you can see, we'll work this guy on the weekend and you'll see, watch his holiday, or I'm sorry, his weekend units and his EC units and his actual change as we drop this in. This makes building a schedule tremendously quick because I can now very quickly have feedback about, am I filling all my department shifts, and how well I'm treating how fairly I'm treating all my users with regard to the number of shifts they need to work and the type of shifts. Moving shifts around is as easy as dragging and dropping. I can do that right within the schedule. I can submit things into, send things to trash, that sort of thing. When the schedule is done being built, the builders would just notify the person who has build lock power, and they can now just convert this to a build schedule. Editing the schedule. After it is very important that once you've made the decision to turn an in-build schedule to built, that you are certain you're not gonna need to go back to in-build. The reason for that is when I'm building in the schedule builder, all of the manipulation I do here, dragging and dropping shifts, throwing stuff in the trash, is updating the schedule in the database, but it is not notifying users of those changes because you could be making hundreds of changes, thousands of changes, and that would be a waste. But once you get the schedule set and you convert that to built, you no longer want to make changes in that schedule by converting it back to in-build. That would be one way of editing. Instead, the smarter way of editing the schedule is through the schedule editor. And when you open that up, it first asks you which built period you want to edit. And when I go into it now, it will ask me which shift do I want to change. I can then very quickly say, oh, I want to change this shift of Bernard's. And then what do I want to change it to? I can change it to something else, even a blank shift, nothing, and then submit it. When I make that submission, what will happen is it will notify Bernard that his schedule changed on that date. It will also make the change in the schedule, and it will keep an audit of those schedule edits so that we can review that later on. Again, the main importance is be very clear that your schedule is done being built before switching it from in-build to built, because once it's built, now that's available for everyone's calendar feeds for their personal calendars, and then you should only be making edits to the schedule via the schedule editor. We'll log out here. I think that's all for schedule building and editing, and I hope you found this video useful. Again, you can find us at ShiftJockey.com.